The first guest of the evening is truly a poet. He's an artist. He is a friend and an inspiration to anyone who I think who has ever played the guitar or tried to write poetry. Would you please welcome Gordon Lightfoot?
You're as soft as the rose. You're as sweet as the honey. You're as warm as the bright morning sun. You're as cool as the breeze on the last days of April. You're as fine can be. This is Carefree Highway Revisited, the show that celebrates Gordon Lightfoot's music song by song. I'm your host, Mike Messner, and with me today is a fellow Lightfoot fan from Mechanicsberg, Pennsylvania, making his second appearance on the show, Tim Golding. Tim, welcome back to Carefree Highway Revisited.
Hi, Mike. Nice to be with you.
So what's new with you? The last time we hung out, we were talking about highway songs. That was back over 2 years ago, actually, in September of 2023. Any headlines with you that we should know about?
Yeah, I've just been busy with work, busy with family. I've got 3 kids, and my oldest just went to college this year, so that's a big adjustment. Things have been good.
Fantastic. My only is a senior in high school this year, so he's headed off to college in a year. We'll have to meet up again and talk about the sensations of that. So you wanted to talk about Fine as Fine Can Be today, and I wanted to know why you wanted to discuss it and what do you like about the song?
Yeah, to me, it's a beautiful, warm song. It kind of evokes positive feelings, warm feelings. The imagery of it is great. It really struck me the first time that I heard it when I was a teenager, and just really liked the song ever since then. And I think when we talked about Old Dance Records, the album and the song at the time that we talked about highway songs, I see these 2 albums as somewhat linked. I think when we talked, I referred to them kind of as cousins. Old Dance Records is a country-ish album, and this album is definitely kind of continues in that country vein. So I think it's an interesting song. It's a great song. It's a great album.
Yeah, I agree with you. I haven't played both of them back to back, but I think there are some common threads to that. The thing that I love about it is that it's a fairly rare performance by Lightfoot on the piano. Now, we know that he, for a while, wrote piano pieces for a living, and we know that he had piano theory because he'd learned that at Westmont. But there's not too many records where we know that he played piano. The other thing about it is that it sounds vaguely like an early Eagles song. And I like to say that it's as if the Eagles and Leonard Cohen got together and had a baby. And so this is the kind of song that I think would fit in both of those. It kind of straddles it. The thing that I think of is that this could be a wedding song from a father to a daughter. Is that something that occurred to you too?
It's funny you mention that because this song actually was the song that my older sister and my dad danced to at her wedding as like the father-daughter dance. And that was a great moment to see. And another funny story related to this song and weddings is at my wedding. This was supposed to be our bridal party dance. It's like a nice waltz, and the story is the DJ that we used came at the right price, if you know what I mean. And we met with them in advance, and I said, go over the track list for the songs you want played at your wedding. And I mentioned this song. This should be the wedding party song. And he said, oh, yeah, that's fine. I got it. And I was kind of like a little surprised, because it's kind of a deep cut. It's not a well-known song. So he said, yeah, I got it. So he introduces the song on the dance floor, and he says, I hope I got this right. And then he plays Brandy, You're a Fine Girl by Looking Glass.
Oh, no.
So I had a huge wedding party. There were 8 groomsmen. My wife had 8 of her friends. They were all out on the floor expecting a nice waltz, fine as fine can be. And we get Brandy, You're a Fine Girl.
Which is a fine song in and of itself, but definitely not what you were looking for.
Not what we were looking for. That's right.
Oh, man.
I'll never forget that when he said, I hope I got this right. And I'm thinking, you really got it wrong.
Anytime you have somebody saying, I hope I got this right, I mean, you don't want to hear that from a surgeon and you don't want to hear that from a DJ at your wedding, especially if you're only planning on being married once. Oh, correct. Man, I'm so sorry. Well, I hope you never hired that DJ again.
I did not, and thankfully my marriage has lasted almost 22 years. 22 years this month, as a matter of fact.
Is this a song that you would best listen to in a particular setting or an activity? I mean, driving, sitting at home, inside, outside, day, night, time of year. What would be the ideal setting for it to be part of the soundtrack of Tim's life?
This is one of the songs that I can really listen to at any time of year, any time of day, anything that I'm doing. I think that's because it's such a warm song. It's a good feeling song. So it provides that kind of background music that's positive. And again, because I have some of those memories in my own life with the song, that it evokes good memories. I like it in that respect.
Yeah, me too. There aren't too many songs of his or any songs at all that I could just listen to over and over again in any kind of setting, but this is one of them. I don't have a daughter, so I won't be able to give her away. But maybe if and when my son ever gets married, I can meet with her dad and say, okay, this is what you want to do, but we won't be hiring that DJ that you mentioned a minute ago.
I will not pass on his information to you.
Please don't. Well, let's talk a little bit about how the song got written. It was mentioned just once in the Jennings book, and from the songbook liner notes, he said this, I'm quoting directly. This is dedicated to my daughter Ingrid, who is now in her early 30s and has given me 2 grandchildren. I haven't written songs for all my children. Not that I don't want to, but the song has to be right. All I need is time, unlimited time. And that's kind of bittersweet when we think about the fact that Gordon's not with us anymore. So what do we know about Ingrid Lightfoot?
She was his first daughter from his first marriage. And I think she's gone on to have her own family. She had some grandkids for Gordon. When I think about his relationship with his kids from his first marriage, which unfortunately, broke down and they divorced, I think when he wrote this song, he was missing her. He was thinking about his daughter from a distance. I think that's why those just very heartfelt lyrics came out when he was probably thinking about his daughter and setting down to write a song for her. I think he was missing.
Oh, yeah. And there's at least one very overt reference to him missing her within the song. I don't know if she was married at any point, but she does have 2 kids. She is apparently single now. She, I think, is 60 or 59 years old. She did spend her youth in Toronto. And I don't know if this is a profession, but I do know that she is an advocate for animal rights. She does petitions to shut down animal shelters that are known for animal abuse or neglect. She helps dogs and cats find new homes. And then she apparently had 2 songs of Gordon's that she impacted in some way. One of them was For Lovin' Me, because she knew that that was written, at least in part, about her mother, Britta. And that was one of the reasons why Gordon stopped singing it after a while. He also realized that it was a very chauvinistic song, so he quit doing that. But didn't she also have some impact on If You Could Read My Mind?
Yeah, I think she, over time, thought that the lyric in that song should be changed from the feelings that you lack to the feelings that we lack. There's 2 people in a marriage, and the way he wrote it, when it was first written, it kind of sounded like he was putting the onus on his spouse, when in reality, it was a 2-way street. It was probably both of them.
Yeah, and thank goodness that Gordon listened to her, because whenever she made that request of him, he immediately started changing the lyrics in performance. And it's all to the good. And I think it's a much more sensitive song as a result of that. I think that's everything that we know about Ingrid. But Ingrid, if you're listening, please reach out to us because we'd love to have you on the show. Time to talk about the lyrics a little bit. But before we do that, Tim, is there a favorite lyric that you have from the song that we can emphasize as we go through here?
I was thinking about that a little bit. The thing I can say is that the imagery, as I've said before, as we've been speaking, is positive and loving and emotionally warm. So to me, it's the overall composition that evokes warm feelings. And, as a father of children, to me, it kind of speaks from that perspective of a parent, a loving parent for their child. In this case, he was missing his child from a distance, which was unfortunate, but that's what it speaks to me. It's just the positive energy of the song.
Yeah, and we will go through most of the lyrics here because there's probably some that are more meaningful than others. You're listening to Carefree Highway Revisited. We'll be right back after a word from a podcast partner or two. Hey, I just wanted to take a second to tell you about my latest podcast discovery. Firebreathing Kittens is an actual play one-shot podcast that plays various tabletop role-playing games with a season-long plot. Because there's a beginning and an end to each week's story, you can start at any episode. Yeah, you won't miss a thing. Every week has a different combination of 4 from the same rotating cast of people. Join Firebreathing Kittens as they solve detective mysteries, attempt comedic banter, and enjoy friendship. That's Firebreathing Kittens podcast. Check it out.
Is that song really a cover? What instrument are they playing there? What do those crazy lyrics mean? If you're the kind of person who thinks about stuff like that, you're in luck because I've got just the podcast for you. How Good It Is chooses a single song each episode and takes a dive into the story behind the song and the artist who made it famous. I'm Claude Call. You can find me in your favorite podcast software or just point your browser to howgooditis.com.
How good it is.
The first verse was just really similes about Ingrid. And so none of those really jumped out at me, but I loved the fact that he was using the particular words that he did. And then we get into the second verse and it's "you're like time is to space." And of course, I think of the time-space continuum, which I guess Einstein came up with. And I thought that's kind of interesting. And Gordon was not a terribly scientific guy. He certainly believed in nature and he certainly appreciated nature, but I don't know that he had any particular familiarity with science. Any ideas about why he used that particular phrase, time and space?
Yeah, to me, there are so many of his lyrics where you can try and connect them to a specific thing in his life, or the other part of it is the poetic license, right? That just a writer who's taken in all kinds of knowledge and it all feeds their ability to write these lyrics and put phrases together and do it in a simple kind of straightforward way that flows. And to me, it just speaks to, I just think he was a very well-read guy and he researched his song matter very diligently. And I think he was an intellectual, to be honest with you. I think he was really, really bright and spent a lot of time on his craft, just taking in information that then he could use in these songs.
He was well read, and although I don't have any familiarity with the kind of stuff that he did read, he did immerse himself in a whole lot of different things. And you're right about the poetic license, but I thought it was an interesting turn of phrase. You're like faith is to trusting, and faith and trusting are really synonymous. And so what that suggests to me is that this is a young lady who has a lot of integrity. This is not somebody who is two-faced. What you see is what you get, even when she was a fairly small child. You're like blue is to feelin' unkind. You're like joy is to love. And speaking as a history teacher, this is one that I really love because one causes the other. Feelin' unkind is going to make somebody else feel blue. Love is going to cause joy. And so it means that she's very deliberate about what she does. She takes action. And maybe she's headstrong about it, but I think certainly she's not somebody who's just willing to let life pass her by and toss her around. And then, and when I am gone, my thoughts are all with you. And this is what you were talking about a minute ago, Tim, the idea that when he's on the road or away from the kids, because at this point, when he wrote this, he and Britta had probably not been living together for a long time. And maybe the divorce had just happened, or maybe it was finalized a short time before he wrote this. But it means that when he's away from them, he's thinking about them. When I first heard this, I thought, and when I am gone, I thought to myself, are you talking about dying? And he's not talking about that at all. He's talking about just being away from his kids.
Yeah, and I think he really felt that. When I was at one of his concerts, as he was introducing the song, If Children Had Wings, which was on Endless Wire, which was, a few years after this album was released. But he introduced it as saying, my wife took my kids overseas. And I think Britta took them to the south of France in like the
Yes.
late 70s. And he wrote If Children Had Wings kind of as a love letter to them. If I could be there, or if they could fly to me that quickly, if they had wings. I think he felt bad about the breakup of his marriage, felt bad about missing his kids' lives and being present for them. This line just makes me think of that. It wasn't a topic that was ever far from him. It found its way into multiple songs throughout his career. His longing, his missing, and over time, I think he tried to obviously make right some of the hurt that he'd caused earlier in his life. And that found its way into his songs too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the rain is for the crops, you're like food for my thoughts. Again, a brilliant turn of phrase. He's thinking about her all the time, although I don't think it's exclusive to her. I'm only thinking about Ingrid. I'm not thinking about Fred. I'm not thinking about Meredith. But she is inspiring to him, and she makes him more creatively productive.
Yeah.
You talked about If Children Had Wings. And maybe by this time she has tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, you need to not say those words in those songs the same way. I'm not sure what the timing was of that, but she was a creative impetus for him. You're like leaves are for trees. You're like bees are for buzzin'. And again, it comes back to purpose. She's motivated. She is not someone who is just kind of sitting around waiting for things to happen. She's someone who is going to take the initiative on things. Any other lyrics that you want to touch on here?
Yeah, that last line about the leaves, that to me, trees are beautiful when they have their leaves on. And buzzing bees can be beautiful as long as they're not stinging you, you know? But the imagery of, you know, leaves on trees and buzzing of bees is just a great turn of phrase.
And then he finishes up with, you're as bright as the moon, you're as light as a feather, you're as fine can be. Beautiful ending to a beautiful song. Well, the song appeared on Cold on the Shoulder originally. That was his 10th original album. It came out in 1975, between Sundown and Summertime Dream, I guess. It was produced by Lenny Waronker. It was the 9th song on the record. You said it was a deep track, and this is about as deep as it gets. So it was the 3rd song on side B out of 12 songs. It was not released as a single, although I think it could have been. The album went to 44 in Australia, 3 in Canada, and 10 in the US. So he was still producing hits at this point, just not with this particular song. I think Rainy Day People was the single that was released from this particular one. Allmusic.com did a review of the record, and it said, and I'm quoting directly, once you find a formula that works, why not try it again? That is just what Gordon Lightfoot does on Cold on the Shoulder. He doesn't vary from his success of the Sundown album by much, although some of these new tunes are a little bit more upbeat. Highlights include the hit Rainy Day People and the title track. Not another watermark, as it's sort of a holding pattern, but nothing bad about it either, unquote. Tim, do you agree with the review? Was he kind of just in a holding pattern, or was this a move forward for him? Was he regressing? What does this say about where he was in his career?
I think he was in one of the great creative periods of his career. If you look at not only the commercial success he was having, this string of 3 albums between Sundown, Cold on the Shoulder, and Summertime Dream is the period for his career. When he is at the top of his game, he's getting very high chart success off of these albums with the singles. And this is a great album. It's a great creative period for him. And like I said earlier, to me, it kind of continues the path that started on Old Dan's records, you know, kind of a country feel. And he had introduced some new song elements or new musical soundings on that record that then they kind of went in a different direction on Sundown, and then they came back on this album. I don't agree with that review in that I think with the benefit of hindsight, we can say, no, this was a very, very creative period for him, and he was having great success.
I would agree with you, and I would just add that Sundown, it's hard to imagine how he could go above that at this point. Now, Summertime Dream arguably is even better than Sundown was. But to try to get better than what he'd put out in 1974, it's unthinkable at that particular time in his life. So I agree, it's an A-plus album. I don't think that it is better than Sundown, but I also don't think it's any worse.
He was really pushing boundaries. If you listen to these albums in order during that period, you touched on the fact that he was playing piano, and he had not played piano on any tracks, any songs up until this album. And that was one of the things that really struck me when I first listened to it as a teenager. Found it in a record store and put it on, and he plays 2 songs on this album, him at the keys. And I looked it up and I'm like, wow, Gordon Lightfoot plays the piano. He's the guitar guy. He's never played piano before. So I think he was taking, again, those creative energies and really trying to push the boundaries. And he sits down at the piano and produces 2 songs on this album. To me, that's really interesting. He didn't do it again, after this. I think he was firing on all cylinders and trying new things.
I do too. And I think it's kind of a shame that he didn't do more on the piano, because the thing that I think of is that Billy Joel has started playing Sundown in his concerts since Gordon died. And Billy Joel has said that Lightfoot was one of his great influences, and he always wanted to go and meet Lightfoot and say thank you. And I don't think that ever happened, but it would be interesting to think about how some of these songs might sound if they had piano backing rather than guitar backing. You're listening to Carefree Highway Revisited. We'll be right back after a word from a podcast partner or two. One minute, you're a teacher preparing for the new school year. The next, you're transported to a fantastical realm shrouded in forgotten magic. The creatures around you think you're a long-vanished mage. You have no technology. You have no memory of how you got here and no idea how to get home. All you have is misplaced magic. Haladar, the Last Surveyor, is the new fantasy novel by acclaimed author Rob Perrier. Available now on Amazon.com and robperrier.com.
Hi, this is Audie Martello, the host of the Mostly Folk podcast, a 60-minute foray into the music we all love. You will hear newly released albums, classic folk, country, and bluegrass music, as well as some traditional music that may or may not be true to the genre. Sometimes irreverent, often opinionated, but always entertaining. You may even hear a radio magic trick every so often, as well as numerous interviews via Zoom and telephone with established as well as indie artists. Mostly Folk is available wherever you listen to podcasts, and always at mostlyfolk.org.
I didn't know that he had not played piano on any track before, so he'd always had somebody else coming in and playing keys up to now?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the thing. I mean, when you listen to him playing, I'm not a musician, but the very full sound that he gets on this particular song with the piano is really great. And the other song is Bells of the Evening, which was earlier in this album, but is a really beautiful song as well in its own right.
See, I know there's piano on Cotton Jenny, but that's the one that came to mind as we're having this conversation. There are probably many other songs where there was a piano, but it was probably played by somebody else. Speaking of the personnel that played on this song, Gordon, as you said, was playing piano and vocals. And then I only heard a couple, maybe 3 other instruments. I believe it was Terry Clements who was playing acoustic guitar on this, because I can hear the resonance of the strings. Pee Wee Charles was, of course, playing steel guitar, and that's my favorite musical aspect of the song. We'll come back to that in a second. And then Nick DeCaro did the orchestral arrangements, and he did those beautifully. I can't hear any other instruments. Did you?
This album and a lot of these albums from this period, again, if you look at the liner notes, he had both Red Shea, Terry Clements listed. It's hard to say that they both played on this song, but You could tell he was reaching and trying to get very full sounds on these records. And I think that's, again, what he was hearing was he was trying to push forward sonically as a folk artist. I mean, as sonically great as they can be. You know, the strings really add a lot to this song, as they did with a lot of his songs in the 70s. You mentioned Pee Wee Charles, and this is the first album where we see him. He enters the picture and plays on this album, and then he's with Gordon through the early 80s, mid 80s. And the pedal steel becomes a fixture of his sound, really from this point forward. And that's, again, another hearkening back to the Old Dance Records album, when that was the first time pedal steel appeared. And then he goes away from it on Sundown. It's not, he doesn't have any pedal steel on Sundown, but then he kind of returns to it and it stays with him. When you think about the pedal steel and the effect that it has on his music from that period, in the mid 70s through the 80s, the pedal steel on Wreck of the Emma Fitzgerald, you can't imagine that song without hearing the pedal steel. So it becomes a very, very important part of his sound, and a very unique part of his sound from this period going forward. Pee Wee comes on and he stays for a while.
Now, is Pee Wee's Steel your favorite musical aspect of the song?
Yeah, I think it adds a great component to this song for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just the right flavor. It did make the song a little countrified, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because I think it was written genuinely. And I don't think that somebody was pigeonholing Gordon into being a country singer at that point.
Right.
And if it had been released on the country charts, I think it would have done very well. He did play this song quite a bit, 106 times that it was played in concert. The first one was probably in the midst of recording this album, because we know it was recorded in 74 and it came out in 75. The very first time was at Symphony Hall in Boston on October 6th, 1974. As a matter of fact, as I think of it, 1974 was such a huge year for so many artists. Maybe that's another podcast project. And then the last time was near the end of his life. It was in the Club Regent Casino in Winnipeg on October 20th, 2022. And we know that Gordon had passed away in May of 23. So this was really something that he was very, very fond of.
That show in Winnipeg, that was Gordon Lightfoot's final show, his final concert that he ever played. Call it serendipity, call it whatever it is, but he thought enough of this song. And I saw him on that tour, saw him play this song, Fine as Fine Can Be, in York, Pennsylvania in February of 2022. And I think I had seen him play it another time in a show years prior to that. I hope Ingrid maybe takes some solace in that. In her father's final show ever, he played the song that he wrote for. I think that's a nice memory for her.
Let me ask you this. When he played it on the final tour, and you say you saw him in York, did he play the piano on that?
Thank you for reminding me this. No, by then he, in that period of the mid 70s, after he had written the song and put it out, that he did play it on piano, in the first couple of years. And then after that had kind of gotten away from trying to use a piano on stage and played it on guitar. So by the time I saw him on that final tour, he played it in guitar. And if people are interested in finding a version of it on guitar, it's on his All Live album, which was recordings from the 2000 period before he got sick, and what he would refer to as was in full voice for his throat damage from the aortic aneurysm.
There was only one official cover that I could find, but apparently it's kind of a signature piece for Tony Rice. If there are others, I don't know about them. Did I miss any? And the other part of that question is, have you heard Tony's version? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Tony Rice did a great job on a lot of Gordon's songs. And to me, the thing that sticks out on his version is the dobro. He uses Jerry Douglas, who's probably one of the finest dobro players living, and played with Alison Krauss and Union Station and played on a lot of wonderful bluegrass albums. And the mixture between Jerry Douglas dobro and Tony Rice's fine picking of a guitar is really great. So he did a great version.
Is there anybody else that you would like to hear cover the song?
Yeah, I think Lucas Nelson could do a great job with this. Really strong voice, Willie Nelson's son. I'd like to hear him play it for sure.
To me, I already mentioned Billy Joel, and this is probably too countrified for Billy Joel because he's definitely not a country artist. When I think of him, he's more of a city artist, and in very particular New York City. The Eagles, if they had had all the members that they had when they did the Hell Freezes Over album and tour. Since then, of course, Don Felder's been fired, Glenn Frey has passed away, and so I don't know what the current lineup feels like and sounds like, but I know that if you could get Felder and Frey and Schmidt and Henley and Walsh, I would love to hear them do that song. They're not known for doing a whole lot of covers, at least recently, but yeah, I think that would have been fun to hear. Tim, as we're kind of winding down here, any other thoughts on Fine as Fine Can Be?
Yeah, it's a great song. It's a warm feeling song. And I just wanted to say in general, I've never kind of identified in any way with people saying that they listen to music as a comfort, but this has been a kind of a tough year for my family as my mother just recently passed away. And so it's been a tough year. And I've kind of returned to Gordon Lightfoot's music as a comfort during this time because I've been listening to these songs for a very long time. And A Fine as Fine Can Be, the connections to my family, it's a very warm feeling when I listen to it. So it's like having a meeting with an old friend at this point for me with Lightfoot's music. So I just wanted to say that.
Tim Golding, it's been way too long, and I'm very glad that you were able to come and join me today to talk about this song. And if I don't talk to you, I wish you a happy holiday season, and I hope to have you back on this show again real soon.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
And thanks for listening, everybody. If you like this well enough to listen to the whole thing, tell somebody about it. Carefree Highway Revisited is on Apple, Spotify, Acast, or wherever you get your listening matter. I'd like to make a special request for you to visit my Patreon page. I love this show so much, and I want to keep it going, and you're in a position to help. Please head over to www.patreon.com/Carefree Highway Revisited. $1 or $2 a month is all I ask. You can reach me, Mike Messner, at teachermike72@gmail.com. Well, our next episode will feature my guest, Mike Fornes. He is from the Lightfoot Tribute Band, and he and I will be discussing that band, its origins, and its work in honoring Gordon's music. That episode will be coming out in late November or early December 2025. Until then, for Tim Golding, this is Mike Messner reminding you, run for the roses, but don't forget to stop and smell them. We'll see you next time.